Our main character is Satomi. From a young age, he was a victim of natural disasters. While not knowing where to go in the refugee camp, suddenly a monster appeared out of nowhere and plunged straight into the middle of the camp. It stopped right in front of him, giving him a real fright. 10 years later, he has grown up and works for a civil security company. This inspector doesn't trust him, but he wants the inspector to stop digressing and get to the main point. He leads him to the 4th floor. He has heard reports about monsters, but police like him can't enter until civil security arrives. He wonders about his partner because civil security always goes in pairs, but he just now remembers that he lost his partner on the way. When arriving at the scene, the inspector hears that 2 people have disobeyed orders and gone inside, so Satomi kicks down the door and rushes in to see a masked man. The 2 soldiers are already dead. He thinks the man is on their side, but he's actually the one who killed these 2 inspectors, so he rushes to attack. People coming in from outside are all taken care of. He rushes to kick the man in the head. But even though his head has turned nearly 180 degrees, he can still turn it back to normal. He then has to leave and lets him know that he will be the one to destroy this world. He has to let the target escape and tells the inspector to clean up and cordon off the area. Meanwhile, Satomi's partner Inju has been going around looking for him when she meets an injured man. The little girl knows he's been bitten by a monster, so she wants him to say his last words. He then transforms into a spider and shoots web at Inju, then kicks her away. Satomi and the inspector arrive and open fire on it. But regular bullets are useless. Only black bullets made from a special metal can prevent them from regenerating. Inju returns at this moment and kicks the spider to pieces. The little girl runs to hug Satomi and lets the inspector know that she and Satomi are a pair. But the inspector realizes the little girl is a cursed child. They both remember it's time for the supermarket discount, so they run off first. The inspector is left to clean up this mess. He knows children like Inju are born to fight monsters. People like Satomi are assigned to control the powers of those children, and they are the hope of mankind. He then goes back to meet his chairman, Kisara. She really wants to scold him because he only remembered the supermarket discount and forgot to receive payment from the police. When calling back, they won't pay, and the result is he brought back 2 packs of bean sprouts. She finds managing the company difficult because of an employee like him. This month both of them will be starving again. Kisara still hasn't found the source of infection anywhere and no one has seen it, so she'll have to investigate further. She then has to go to the hospital. She remembers that in the past he set a goal to find his parents because he believed they were still alive. But he doesn't like to talk about it anymore and thinks his parents are also dead. He then goes to the teacher who is also a coroner. When he arrives, she gives him a fright and doesn't know how he can live being such a lazy and useless guy. She wants him to start changing if he wants Kisara to notice him. Kisara has long protected him from her brother and her family. But now he's confident that he's strong enough to protect Kisara in return. She gives him a plate of food and obviously no one dares to eat it. He came here to ask about the source of infection. She has told him about the mechanism of the monster virus. When it infects and develops to the point of turning into a monster, it will create a new ability. So it's possible that the monster they're looking for might have the ability to disguise itself. But he and Inju won't let that monster run rampant for too long. In the evening, he and Inju eat only bean sprouts and Inju still happily eats and even praises it as delicious. He wants Inju to go put on proper clothes. After eating, he goes to clean up and gives Inju a stabilizing injection before going to sleep. Inju doesn't let him go to sleep without doing anything to her, so she goes in to bother him. The next morning, he and Inju have breakfast and go to school. Inju wants him to be at ease because no one has figured out her identity yet. The little girl goes to school and seems very happy, so he feels reassured. He knows the nature of cursed children is that they are children born to mothers infected with the virus. Because they can prevent the virus from developing and obtain extraordinary strength, many people don't view these children as human. Humans have been forced to build pillars made of metal that monsters hate in order to survive. After many experiments and failures, humans have prepared to confront them. Many people may view children like Inju as a curse, but they still have to acknowledge that they are the weapons to fight against monsters. Those children are the last hope of mankind. Later at school, Satomi receives a call from Kasada informing him that the Ministry of Defense has assigned them a task. They both arrive and are immediately confronted by a man who looks down on them because Kasara is too young. This guy also provokes Satomi, but his boss tells him to return to his position. They then sit at the meeting table and the general allows them to withdraw because if it's right after the plan, they won't be allowed to withdraw anymore. The leader of Tokyo City, Tenchi, has called. Beside Tenchi is Kasara's grandfather, who adopted him. Tenchi assigns them the mission to find the source of infection and retrieve the box for that person to bring back. Kasara asks what's inside that requires calling the top people here, but she doesn't say. Suddenly, the masked man appears. He stands in the middle of the room and introduces himself as Haruko. He entered by killing a few flies that blocked his way. He also has an adopted daughter named Hina. He came here because he wants to participate in this race. He reveals that inside the box is the treasure of the 7 stars. He wants them to bet their lives on this race to make it more interesting. The boastful guy from earlier rushes at him with a sword, but gets thrown back, losing his sword. Even when guns are fired at him, he has a shield to block them. He has replaced some parts of his body with machinery made of black metal. He reintroduces himself as a former Army Special Forces Mechanized Unit 787, Haruko from the Human Evolution Plan. He then launches the bullets embedded in his shield around. Satomi manages to pull Kasara down to dodge. He also gives Satomi a gift before leaving. Suddenly, someone comes in to announce that the chairman of the executive board, who was the only one absent from the meeting, has died, and that person has lost their head. Satomi understood what was in the gift, and Tenchi ordered them to find the box before Haruko, otherwise he would use it to bring down the black metal pillars. He then went shopping with Inju and on the way encountered a cursed child. The little girl was accused of stealing and assault. The police then came to arrest the girl and Inju really wanted to save her, but Satomi held Inju back. The other girl was arrested while Inju blamed him for not saving her. Feeling quite guilty, he chased after them, and when he reached where the police had gone, he discovered they had shot the girl dead. He was heartbroken that not everyone views cursed children sympathetically. He then realized the girl was still alive, so he took her to the hospital for treatment. Afterwards, he left and happened to meet Haruko again. He wanted him to join his side because he also sees this city as a mistake. He obviously refused, so Haruko had Hina come out to attack him. Inju came to help him and Haruko still invited him by taking out a suitcase of money to bribe him. He straight up refused it, and Haruko said he would regret it and change his mind tomorrow. The next day, he heard that Inju's identity as a cursed child had been revealed. The teacher thought he had hidden it from them, but if he hadn't, would they have allowed Inju to enroll? He went home to look for Inju and couldn't find her, so he went to the suburbs to search. Tenchi had tried to implement policies for cursed children to integrate, and it seems those policies didn't help this society at all. Satomi went to an underground sewer to find shelter for cursed children. A man who also sympathizes with children like him lives here and teaches the children how to control themselves so their eyes don't turn red and reveal their identity. He asked about Inju, but the man had never met her. The reason he searched around here is because this place is Inju's hometown. The man advised him to find a new partner because, after all, civil security people like him only view these children as tools. But he hates that childish way of thinking, because in a year of living with Inju, he has transformed her from a soulless person into the cheerful child she is now. He apologized for shouting and then left, and he didn't believe that Inju could leave a good person like Satomi. After that, he went to meet the teacher, and she made him realize how different his thinking was from normal people. His view of cursed children was very different from others, which is why he was so resentful. He then heard that Inju had returned to class, so he went to check and saw the girl being driven away by her classmates. No one stood up to protect her, so Satomi took Inju away and let her know that they were no longer her friends and wanted her to transfer schools. He would always be by Inju's side, even if the whole world turned its back on her. Suddenly a helicopter arrived, and Kisara informed them that they had found the infectious monster. They both took the helicopter and discovered that this spider had used its silk to create wings and fly in the sky. That's why many people didn't detect it, because who would think a spider could fly? Inju went down first, so Satomi told the pilot to fly lower. He swung down on a rope and stumbled. But Inju, after a few kicks, almost killed the spider and got the box. She believed that if she fought and protected her friends, they would change their view of her. Satomi then went to where the mysterious box was, and Haruko appeared and demanded to take the box from him. Inju was also forced to fight Hina. He rushed to attack, but his armor blocked it, and he gave him a shot. He also sent a shield to press him against the rocks. He had to tell Inju to run and find help. As soon as Inju ran away, he was stabbed twice by Hina and took 2 more shots from Haruko, falling into the river. He later woke up, and Kisara was by his side. She informed him that he had been in a coma for a day and his heartbeat started again at the end of the surgery. The box Haruko took contained something that could summon a level 5 monster. Level 5 is the highest level of monsters when they are very huge and not affected by black metal columns, and their existence could cause mass extinction like 10 years ago. Haruko had escaped from the city to start the summoning process, and the government had to launch a manhunt. Satomi wanted to go stop him. Although knowing he could die, he was ready for it. Kisara showed him that Inju had been lying next to him from the end of the surgery until now. Tenchi then called him and wanted him to participate in the operation to capture Haruko. The reason, he surely knew himself. He then replied that he would participate, and the teacher brought him equipment and some bottles of medicine for him to use when needed. He recalled when she modified his body 10 years ago. She knew it was unforgivable, but he had never resented her. He then met Inju again and set off with her. The two of them, along with other pairs, left the city by helicopter and were dropped into the forest. After moving for a while, Satomi and Inju encountered a level 4 monster and had to run away from it. They both temporarily went down a cliff to avoid it. After a while, they discovered an old house with light, so they gradually went in to check and met a little girl inside. He recognized the girl as the partner of the guy who had caused trouble with him at the meeting. Noticing that the girl was injured, he asked Inju to keep watch outside while he bandaged her. The girl was Keo, and her partner's name was Shaojin. The girl and Shaojin had been separated after encountering a large monster. Keo unconsciously used explosive bullets, causing her and Shaojin to be separated. They had also dealt with several pairs on the way because Shaojin was afraid of others stealing the reward. Keo was quite jealous of Inju because Inju got to live with a kind person like him. Although Keo had to kill people, she believed she would get used to it soon. But he reminded the girl that killing people is very scary, and even scarier when he get used to it. She found him very kind, but also very mysterious and scary. Keo admitted that what he said was right. He had helped her understand feelings she had never known before. Suddenly Shaojin called to report that he had found Haruko. All three had to go together, and on the way, Keo stayed behind and handed Shaojin over to Satomi. She would take care of the ones following them. He ran down there and saw that Shaojin and many others had been killed. Haruko also revealed himself, and Kisara was confident that he would win. Because many years ago, when her parents were killed, Satomi lost an arm, a leg, and an eye while protecting her. And now you've managed to punch through Haruko's armor. He immediately introduced yourself as also being a former Army Special Forces member from Mechanized Unit 787 of the Human Evolution Plan. Haruko felt truly alive and fought more fiercely. The two adults then fought the two children. He still wanted he to join his side, but he repeatedly refused, so he targeted Inju, forcing he to rush to defend her and take a fatal blow from him. He thought he would die there, but he used the vials the teacher gave you. This would give he monster-like regenerative abilities, but using it meant accepting becoming a cursed person. He didn't hesitate to inject it and gained power. He recovered and punched Hina, sending her flying. He also pierced through Haruko's defense, kicking his mask off and sending him falling straight into the sea. His signal disappeared, but the bad news was that a level 5 monster had been summoned. However, Kisara had a plan. She reminded he to look at the abandoned cannon over there. This gun had long been abandoned, but its power was such that one shot could take down a level 5 monster. Your job was just to start it up while Kisara's team would handle the firing. But an incident occurred, forcing Satomi to go to the ammunition room to check, only to find no shells left. He had to remove your arm to use as a substitute shell. But the magnetic field prevented Kisara's team from controlling it anymore, so he had to aim manually. He then tried to target an object 50 kilometers away with one arm. He couldn't aim properly, so Inju decided to help you. Inju helped he regain your composure and then fire. The monster was hit directly and couldn't possibly survive, exploding into pieces. Inju then fell asleep inside the gun while he went out to look for Koya. He found the girl severely injured. She asked about her partner, and he lied that he was safe. The girl was about to transform into a monster, so she wanted he to help her die while still human. She saw he as the only friend she had, and she advised he that if he ever get lost in the future, head towards the light. He had to shoot to end Koya's life, and afterwards a helicopter came to take the survivors back. He then went to meet your adoptive father, who was also Kisara's grandfather. He knew he was the one who caused the recent events and even deliberately used Hina to make people see the danger of cursed children. He originally hated those children because that was the reason his wife died. He chose to believe in Inju and then left. He won't forget the kindness he showed but won't agree with what he did. He then left and recalled when he asked Tenchi about the true nature of monsters. She didn't tell you. He learned that to access classified information, he had to improve your rank in this civil security job, so he decided to go back to Inju and continue living with her. You'll also try to improve your rank to find out the nature of the monsters and at the same time, the reason for your birth. He then went to Kisara's place to train with Inju. The girl could now reach speeds faster than bullets, but he wanted Inju not to kick high while wearing a skirt. Kisara saw that he still hadn't found a new school for Inju, but whatever needs to be done still requires money. And conveniently, Kisara informed he that Tenchi had hired he as a bodyguard. He then went to meet Tenchi, and she informed he that the chairman of the Osaka region would be coming to Tokyo for a visit. Because your adoptive father was giving a speech in China, she needed he to work as a bodyguard. Tenchi already had a security team in place. The head of this security team, Takuto, also wanted your help, but he came here just to hear the explanation about being chosen, not yet accepting the job. Tenchi will wait for your answer. When leaving, he got lost and Takuto came to ask he to refuse the job because the bodyguard position was his. But he drew your gun in response, forcing him to leave. Security then rushed over because of the gunshot sound, so he asked them to tell Tenchi that he would accept the job. When leaving, Satomi saw a group of thugs bullying a little girl, so he went to resolve the situation. Seeing that he were civil security, they ran away immediately. He wiped the girl's face and asked about her situation, but she kept falling asleep. Through introductions, he learned the girl was a night owl type, and her name was Tina. The little girl didn't remember much about where she lived and other things, so he had to give her your number to call if needed. She called to make sure and then remembered where her house was, so she went home. That evening, we learned that Tina was actually an assassin sent from another area to assassinate Tenchi. After returning home and preparing her equipment and retrieving her weapon, she was discovered by a police officer. The police officer thought she had run away from home, but Tina's master told her to deal with the kind policeman. Satomi and Inju bought some things and returned home, noticing the leftover crime scene but only paying it some attention before going home. As they were preparing dinner, a girl came and collapsed in front of your house. According to Satomi, this girl was Miori, the daughter of the chairman of a weapons corporation. Kisara also came and asked he to make food for her, and then she collapsed too. He asked Inju to watch over these two girls because they hated each other, so letting them loose would cause trouble. When the two girls were fed, they started arguing with each other. Kisara accused Miori of freeloading and talking too much, while Miori brought up how her family's company had provided so many bullets for Satomi to use freely and completely free of charge, on the condition that he must attend her school and possibly become her family's son-in-law in the future. If he were in this situation, which side would he choose? On one side, a rich young lady with an undeniable background, and on the other side, a beautiful girl with all utilities provided, also from a significant family but preferring independence. Leave your opinion in the comments. The two girls took out swords and guns to play, so Satomi and Inju moved the table to another corner. And so Satomi's rent increased again. The next morning, he went to Tenshi's place to work as a bodyguard and met Chairman Osaka. She knew he were acquainted with this person, so he frankly said he was a dictator and that she should be careful. As soon as he met him, he greeted Satomi, and he were surprised he was still alive. He realized that he had destroyed the electromagnetic cannon he was planning to send to the moon. But he knew well that if he put that thing on the moon, he would use it to threaten other countries. He stated his ideals, which made he think he was completely insane. When leaving, he were glad that Tenshi didn't agree with his plan. There were rumors that he was collaborating with other countries. He used Japan's black metal to exchange for money and weapons from other countries. Tenshi had a wish to unite the regions of Japan. But now, in this situation, she was worried that many people would be sent here to assassinate her. And she knew it was selfish, but she hoped to work with he for a long time, because now very few people could give her a sense of trustworthiness like you. Inju then woke up and said she had a bad feeling. He then had to watch out the window. A flash of light appeared, and he immediately made Tenshi duck down. A bullet flew in, forcing he to get her out of the car. Another bullet came, so Inju stood up to block it, and let the other bodyguards take Tenshi to safety. He didn't know who had fired, but they were already gone. Tina was that assassin, and she didn't know who had obstructed her. The next morning, he went to meet Tina again and bought food for her. He didn't know who the person from last night was. Although he had investigated suspicious individuals, there were no clues. He then saw Tina sprinkle something on her food to stay alert, but she couldn't eat by herself, so he fed her quickly. The little girl really liked Satomi because he treated her very well. It had been a long time since she felt joy from you. She was then called by her master, so she ran off. The master informed her that the next target would be Kisara. He then returned to school to meet Miori. Kisara wanted to attack because she couldn't let he be alone with Miori. But he were immediately pulled in, and if Kisara broke the door, she would have to pay compensation. He went in to meet Miori, and she had information about last night's incident. Based on the angle, she found the assassin's position, and he asked her to investigate Chairman Osaka. She still wanted he to move to work at her company, and she was ready to offer her body to you. Kisara had to break in to interrupt. Miori added fuel to the fire, making he unsure how to explain because Kisara was known to be stubborn. He told the teacher about it, and she laughed because he were indeed quite attractive and gallant, but sexually weak to the point of not daring to make a girl your own. The reason she called he was because he had reached a sufficient rank to hear some information. She was the chairperson of the Human Evolution Project, and that project involved 4 countries. Because the project was quite difficult at that time, and they discovered that cursed children had stronger fighting abilities, they allowed the mechanized soldiers at that time to become partners with cursed children to fight together. Most mechanized soldiers had high ranks, So if he wanted to investigate your background, he might face opponents as strong as or stronger than Haruko. Your work was done, so the teacher told he to go home and comfort Kisara first, as she still had business with Inju. Tina at this time heard her master give more information that Kisara had a pair of civil security officers working under her. Just hearing Inju's name, she dropped the phone and her master hung up. She then went to Kisara's office to open fire. She had hidden and then rushed out to cut the gun. But she was still counterattacked and choked by Tina. She called Satomi's name, causing the little girl to hesitate. Satomi rushed to attack, and the girl was very shocked to see Satomi here. Tina had fired to chase Satomi away, but he held her back and let Kisara cut the floor. Tina quickly escaped, while Kisara was taken to the hospital for dialysis because her kidneys had long been unstable. He wanted her to have kidney surgery soon, but there was no supply. She had learned something from Miori and decided to let he hold her hand. But she was suddenly groped by Inju. There was a possibility that the recent attack and the assassination attempt on Tenchi were related, so they had to take responsibility for letting Tina escape. He also wondered about what the teacher said to Inju. Inju didn't understand much because it was all about physics and such. Kisara wanted he to stop Tina, and he would certainly do that whether she said so or not. He then had to go with Tenchi again. He wanted her to stay safe because he was sure Chairman Osaka was behind this. Yet she still pretended to be naive for the sake of peace. But she was ready to accept the outcome. They then arrived at the meeting place, but were attacked again, so Satomi had to block the bullets and got injured. He took her away as bullets were still firing, so he had to tell the driver to drive into the parking garage. He let Inju go to deal with Tina. He believed Inju would be safe, but Tenchi came to inform he that she had just investigated Tina and knew Tina was a high-level mechanized soldier, so Inju certainly wouldn't be able to defeat her. But when he just called Inju, Tina was the one who answered. He then went to the hospital, and the doctor said Inju was stable, but would be in a coma for 2 days. He heard Kisara say that Tenchi still had a third meeting tomorrow evening. He then remembered when he arrived at the scene and learned that Inju had been shot from 4 different directions and 3 machine guns had been destroyed. He then went home and didn't know what to do. Perhaps he should quit the job because both Kisara and Inju had been injured, and he couldn't defeat Tina. He then met Takudo again and wanted him to make a fake plan while he would deal with and protect Tenchi herself. He then went to meet the teacher and asked her to use her knowledge about mini-aircraft to help he fight Tina, because he wanted to work to raise your rank and learn about the secrets of the world. He then left and called Miori, going to her place to train. He had a mechanical eye that helped he process information faster. But the results showed that your current speed compared to Tina's was only 1/6 of hers. That night, Tina had planned an assassination. But the little girl saw that the position seemed suspiciously obvious on purpose. Tina then left and hoped Satomi wouldn't come. But then the harsh reality made Tina and he face each other. He would try to defeat Tina at all costs. He then dodged bullets from afar and rushed into a building to hide. He saw unmanned aircraft and shot them down. Miori called to inform he about those remotely controlled machine guns. He were discovered, so the guns aimed at you, forcing he to hide. Miori informed that there were a total of 5 guns around 3 buildings. Tina was likely in the middle building. He had gone up to a higher floor when he encountered 2 unmanned aircraft. As soon as they scanned you, he shot them all down. He went up to the rooftop and then discovered Tina up there, so he rushed and jumped up there. He saw that Tina had left her gun here, as Miori reported that Tina was near you. While paying attention to the radar, Tina jumped down from above to attack. The girl gradually overpowered you, and just as he were about to pull out a bomb, she sent unmanned aircraft ahead and threw a knife to detonate it, blasting he into the wall. He then noticed that the bomb didn't seem to explode. As he were about to give up, Inju's voice urged he on, and the stun bomb exploded, temporarily blinding Tina. He took the opportunity to defeat the girl, and Tina wanted he to finish her off. but he took her outside. Tina believed that her only purpose was to fight, and he had taken that away, so he had to take responsibility. Suddenly, Tina was shot by Takudo. He had someone restrain he to finish off Tina, but Tenchi arrived to stop him. She had left the meeting and wanted to know what Satomi desired. He wanted power to protect those he cared about, so she promoted he to level 300, higher than Takudo's authority. He shot his finger and forbade him from touching your people again, or he would shoot him for treason. A few days later, he heard that Chairman Osaka had left, and there was no evidence of his connection to Tina. He then returned to Kisara's company to find that Inju had recovered, and she had also hired Tina because now Tina had nowhere else to go. Tina hoped for your help, but he said directly that he wouldn't take responsibility while she was here. A few days later, Satomi became a teacher for children outside the town. The kids constantly suggested that he and Inju had planned a wedding and such, but he only saw Inju as a house guest. The kids asked similar questions about he and Kisara, but she denied that she and Satomi were lovers. Tenchi later came to visit, but her main purpose was to find Satomi to report that monsters were eroding the black metal block protecting the town, but they could create a replacement in 9 days. However, in just 3 days, the block would be destroyed, and the monsters would invade and destroy the city. She needed he to form a civil security team to fight and buy time until they could replace the black metal block. In the evening, he saw 2 girls waiting for he at home. Tina had made dinner, pizza, and she couldn't make anything other than pizza. At night, Inju went to sleep while Tina talked with you. She knew about the impending threat to the city and decided to follow he to fight. He didn't know how to deal with the monsters yet, so he would probably have to recruit more people. Tina would fight with he because he had saved her life. The next morning, Kisara came to pick up Tina, but he couldn't find her. The girl then emerged from under the blanket, grateful to he for teaching her some new things last night. Everyone misunderstood, and Kisara called the police immediately without defending you. Satomi then took Tina to recruit soldiers. He also took the opportunity to take her out. When he reached the clothing store, the clothes were too expensive, so he ran ahead. Both of he played at the fountain and then went to see stuffed animals. On the way, he both saw a cursed child who was also blind. He thought that cursed children were immune to diseases, but this girl had blinded herself when she heard her mother say she hated these eyes. He also saw people playing mean tricks, so he gave the girl money to go home. The girl then heard about people protesting. He and Tina then went to the house of acquaintances, the Katajiri brothers. Both knew about the black block and your recruitment efforts, but the older brother demanded payment. If it was just increasing rank and a few other things, it wasn't necessary. So he wanted them to fight for you, but they only served those stronger than them. So the 4 of he went to the backyard to practice fighting. Satomi was too easy. He noticed there were a lot of wire ropes tied around. Tina constantly dodged and knew exactly where the wire ropes were. She was rushed by the younger brother, but controlled the wire ropes to restrain him. She admitted these 2 brothers were strong because they could challenge a high level like her. He then took Tina to meet your teacher, because Tina had heard about her but never had the chance to meet. Both of he went inside but hadn't met the teacher yet. While looking around the room, she suddenly rushed to grab Tina. It turned out she hadn't eaten in a long time. She noticed Tina and thought he were about to go to jail for a long time, but he hadn't kidnapped anyone. Tina also trusted you, so the teacher made up a bunch of perverted things he did. Tina was starting to doubt, but he advised her not to listen. The teacher also mentioned that Shuma had come looking for he the other day. Tina asked about Shuma, and Satomi explained that he was your senior when he were learning martial arts. Shuma was so strong that he could never defeat him, but he suddenly left the dojo without reason. Tina knew she would soon be hunted, so she was thinking about leaving Kisara's company. But both of he called Tina an idiot, because Satomi wasn't weak enough to need her to worry. Since Tina didn't hate them, there was no problem at all. Tina then fell asleep, and the teacher noticed that Inju and Tina were indeed still young. But cursed children would soon be eroded by the virus and die. If you wanted to change the world, you'd have to become a politician. But he were confident there were many ways to change the world, and one of them was to eliminate all monsters. The teacher laughed when she heard this, because he were indeed different from her. He had a very pure soul. The teacher then opened some secret documents for he to see, and the information that was supposedly deleted was still here. But someone had locked it so no one could access it. Suddenly, Kisara called telling he to watch the news immediately. The fact that the black metal block was gradually turning white had been discovered by the press. They announced it to the whole city, and Tenchi had to hold a press conference to clarify the situation. People questioned her about knowing that the metal block would soon change color and lose its effect but not announcing it. The older Katajiri brother thought Tenchi was pitiful for being caught in the wave of criticism. Moreover, rich people had bought all the plane tickets to leave, so riots would happen soon. The three girls complained that their tent looked like a rag, so Satomi had to quickly find another pair to complete the team to receive proper supplies. He and Inju went around looking for those who met the requirements. Inju found a pair, but he noticed that people wearing armor like this were usually very afraid of death, so inviting them on a mission that required risking their lives would be useless. Inju found a group wearing quite little armor, but looking quite strange, so he passed. He couldn't find any suitable team. Both of he then discovered a group gathering over there, so he went to look and saw that the armored guy had been stabbed to death there. He both went back down, and it seemed there was a fight, so he went to check, and Satomi recognized his senior Shuma there. He was being provoked by a fat guy, so he put his partner in a corner first and let his partner cut the guy's gun. Satomi came in to meet his senior again. Shuma had heard about your recent exploits and also wanted to join your team to fight. He asked if the dead armored guy over there was Shuma's doing, but he didn't know anything about it. That evening, Shuma introduced himself to the Katajiri brothers. His partner was Fuse, who was cat-like. The reason she wore this hat was to hide her cat ears. Now their group only had 6 people, but Satomi wanted up to 10 people to be complete, because 10 people would be easier to support each other. Suddenly Kisara also arrived, and she wanted to meet with Tina. Tina's rank was currently being revoked, but Kisara had come to beg Tenchi and Tina would be allowed to continue fighting. She was also surprised to see Shuma again, but Satomi had pulled her outside. He thought her illness was still there, so he hadn't let her fight yet, but Tina also came to ask on Kisara's behalf, and she also used her position as chairman to order you. Suddenly someone came to report that the commander requested an assembly. The commander introduced himself as Gadu and began to read a speech to raise morale, while explaining their plan to escort the team installing the new tower. But he raised your hand to suggest that if they needed to escort the installation team, why not move the camp closer to that area to deal with contingencies more easily? But he would only support if the replacement team requested help. Your opinion was almost rejected. When he returned to your group, he sat in a corner feeling discouraged. He wanted to know if Kisara really wanted to fight with you. He were very afraid that something would happen to her, but she also didn't want to just sit and pray while he put yourself in danger. The two of he sat looking at each other, and Satomi was about to express his feelings, but was then interrupted by Tina. The others also followed and thought the two of he were being romantic in the middle of this situation. Satomi then introduced himself again with the whole group. He thanked everyone for lending him their strength to rebuild the black metal block. Inju thought that now the group was almost complete. They could recite a slogan to boost morale. The next morning, he and Kisara went to teach the children again. He wanted the whole class to write their future dreams on paper. No one could think of what to write. Satomi felt that doing this might help them forget some of the tension from the metal weapon. The uncle also thanked both of he for coming to teach during this tense time. Inju then brought up her paper and wished to be Satomi's wife. Tina also submitted her paper with a similar wish. Time was up, so he asked the whole class to submit their papers, but still no one was finished. So he asked Kisara how much money was left and decided to take the whole class on a field trip. He took the children by train and led them to the statue of the Origin Flame. In the past, the city had been attacked by monsters twice, and after winning the second battle, this statue was erected to commemorate the victory and remember those who sacrificed. The children had heard about the memorial festival that the city holds annually and worried that they wouldn't live to see the festival. But the reason he brought the children here was to motivate them to trust he and the government to protect them. He and Kisara would also fight to protect your students. So the kids suddenly gathered and decided to accept you. They all decided they would be your wife in the future. Inju and Tina had hugged he to claim he exclusively. But others also rushed to hug Satomi. That night, when everyone had gone to sleep, Kisara came to find Satomi and wanted to take a walk with him. She led him to the metal block, and it had been eroded excessively. This block would need to build small blocks from afar and bring them here to assemble. But what if the monster spits out corrosive fluid again? But it seemed that since the metal block malfunctioned, that monster hadn't been seen again, so he suspected it needed to recharge its energy. So he asked Kisara to investigate. She then went to lie on the grass and wanted Satomi to lie with her. She admitted that she was very happy because having you, Inju, and Tina at the company felt like a family. But that happiness could very well end, which made her very worried. He swore to protect her and that he and the two girls wouldn't go anywhere. He had held Kisara's hand and she noticed that today was almost over. And in just 2 more days, that metal block would be destroyed. The next day, the city was much emptier as the shelter had been built. But only 30% of the population had space, so people were suspicious of this evacuation plan. Satomi was walking on the street when he saw the blind girl from before being bullied, so he ran to help. The girl apologized to Satomi because she had promised him she wouldn't do this work anymore, but still did. He then told the others to go away and fired a shot. He had helped the girl and wanted her to go home this time and not come back here again. The girl touched your face to write what he looked like. That afternoon, when he returned to the camp, he heard that Kisara wasn't happy teaching today. Because without Satomi, none of the kids accepted her. He tried to encourage her, but it was useless. The older Katajiri gave Kisara a stack of papers that someone had sent today. This was the investigation result about the metal block that she had researched. She discovered something and immediately threw the stack of papers into the fire. Satomi tried to retrieve it and saw that it was related to Kisara's family. Satomi continued to teach 1 more day to say goodbye to his students. The Katajiri brothers thought he would only bring more trouble as he wanted to have responsibility for them. He went to Kisara's tent, and Tina was about to wake Kisara up. But he wanted both of them to go later if they wished. He and Inju both planned what to do on the last day before carrying out the mission. But when they arrived, he saw police standing around. Feeling something was wrong, he ran to check and witnessed a bomb crater there. He was then taken by the police to identify the bodies, and they were all his students. They had all been killed by the bomb. He went outside and met Inju running here. He told Inju to go home, but she wanted to see her friends. He told the police to take Inju away, but she used her power to rush in and then cried out at this scene. He could only feel helpless and couldn't do anything. Satomi went up to the rooftop to look at the dreams that the students had written on paper, but they were all blown away by the wind. Kisara called and informed that Tina had calmed down. He knew this incident was caused by those who opposed and hated the cursed children, because he found black metal fragments in the bomb pieces. He didn't know who he and Inju were fighting for, and for what. If they were the ones enforcing justice, where was that justice in this garbage world? She wanted him to fight to save those people, and they would somewhat change their thoughts about the children. He found this work truly nonsensical. But then the entire tower suddenly collapsed. The reason was that they didn't anticipate the wind force causing it to fall earlier than expected. Kisara would arrive there first, while Satomi had gone to call Inju. The girl was still out of it, and when he mentioned the tower's collapse, she had to regain her composure to join him in the fight. The civil security forces then stood waiting to see how the government army on the other side would fight. The explosions suddenly stopped, making them think the army had won. But the tank flew back, and the monsters then poured in. Satomi's group discovered a flock of flying monsters that could potentially flank them. But leaving their position now would be considered insubordination. However, the entire group only followed his direction. His group thus abandoned their position and ran into the forest to attack the monsters inside. Everyone coordinated well and supported each other to ensure no one was in danger. He and the group later returned to the battlefield, but the monsters had now swept through everything, leaving nothing behind. The remaining people had also been rammed by the monsters. He saw the commander standing up there. He went over to ask and learned that everything was over. Among the monsters, there was something called the Spear of Light. He and his associates, though dead, were still holding hands, and now he fell down and straight into the monster's mouth. Afterward, he also witnessed how terrifying the Spear of Light, the commander mentioned, was. They shot all over the battlefield and destroyed everything they shone upon. The monsters then suddenly turned back and retreated. All that remained after the battle was just ruins. Half of the troops had died. As for the monsters, even if they died, they could still reproduce. The battle situation after tonight would become 500 civil security forces against 2,000 monsters, a completely hopeless number. The next day, he went to the field hospital and saw Anju working there. Kisara praised that the girl had helped the soldiers feel better. His teacher also came here, and she had been given a ticket to go down to the shelter, but had torn it up instead of giving it to someone else. Because people would kill each other for it anyway. She didn't believe a shelter could protect everyone. She chose to stay here to encourage those who dared to face danger. Human thoughts are usually logical, but actions are based on emotions. She wanted him to act because if he stopped, death would catch him. When he asked about Anju, she only felt sorry for the girl's friends. But she still thought Anju was okay because the girl had more resilience than they thought. For now, they wouldn't mention anything that would make Anju remember that sad event. The teacher then let all three go home and rest. The three arrived at an abandoned mansion in the forest. This was the temporary resting place that Shuma had found. As soon as they entered, Tina had already cleaned up inside. It's only for a few days, but clean is still better. In the middle of summer, they still had to light the fireplace because the dust from the black pillar had covered the sky, so they would be cold for the next few days. The group then sat down to eat and drink happily like a family. They didn't know why the monster from last time had retreated. Kisara also called him over, saying there was something to discuss. It was about the patients hit by the Spear of Light. Most were deaf and blind, quite similar to the symptoms of mercury poisoning. Tina had also seen a level 4 monster that seemed capable of shooting mercury, as Kisara said, but she couldn't transmit the image. Suddenly a soldier came to Satomi and told him to meet Commander Gadu. He had lost a leg in battle and asked him how his son was in his final moments. He could only lie that the person fought very bravely. He felt quite mistaken for letting his son join the civil security. He had discovered the secret about the big monster in the battle. He knew that the big one secreted a substance called pheromone, and that caused the surrounding monsters to concentrate towards it. And its injury had caused the whole herd to retreat, so they only needed to kill that big one, and the monsters would disintegrate. But he knew that thing was immortal because he had tried slashing its brain or attacking its heart, but it could still recover. He also knew about the one shooting the Spear of Light, and that one was no less dangerous than the big one. Both were like the king and queen, so to win, they had to defeat both. But he only now mentioned that he and your group had left your position on your own accord. Although he explained that he went to deal with the rear group, orders were still orders. He decided to disband your group and execute he as an example. When he resisted, he were knocked down by his associate, and his way of executing he was to force he to infiltrate the monsters and deal with the queen. In return, he wouldn't punish your team. He had to go back to pack your belongings and leave silently. Kisara discovered he leaving, but he didn't want her to follow. She wanted to run away with you, but where was there left to hide? He had to go alone, and on the way were attacked by a pack of dogs. He fired your gun to kill some and ran, but they dragged he into the river. He clung to a rock but were surrounded on the shore. But suddenly they turned away, and when they came back, they were all dead. He met Haruko and Hina again. He was still alive and came to help you. He was still wary of him, so he reminded he that he had given he medicine and bandages to treat your wounds. He asked what he were doing, and he told him about going to kill monsters. He had seen the monster shooting mercury that he were looking for because he had observed yesterday's battle. The reason he didn't participate was that he didn't need peace. The reason he wore a mask was because no one wanted to see his face. If they did, that person would regret it. He knew he were jealous of his power, and he was also jealous of your happy life. So he decided he would teach he what true joy is. He was sure he would have to join his side. The next morning, he met Haruko again, and he told he the location of that queen. He went, and he followed because he also wanted to encounter that monster. The three of he found the monster's lair. Haruko pointed out the one he had seen, noting that its limbs were degenerated so it would need other monsters to help it feed and move. Originally, Satomi planned to blow it up with explosives, but your backpack had been swept away by the river. Haruko wanted to go in and deal with it using his mechanized body parts, and he alone wouldn't be enough, so he needed Satomi's help. Both of he charged in and launched powerful attacks, causing the monster to cry out in pain. It only managed to fire one shot before completely collapsing. The small monsters were alerted and ran around in disarray. Satomi suffered complications from his wounds and was rammed, but Hina came to rescue him. The three of he hid in a corner and discovered the big one was also in this group and fleeing. He ran to report to Tenchi to send out planes because he had dealt with the queen. She sent out jets to fire missiles at the monsters. It knocked down the planes. The king, though its head was smashed, was still immortal as Gadu had said. The battle afterward was again fierce, and when he returned to the camp, most of it was in ruins. But Inju was still okay and rushed to hug he because he had left alone. He also met Kisara again, and she informed he that he would be the new commander since Gadu had sacrificed himself. He went to see Gadu's body and honestly said he didn't hate him. The people down there were causing trouble with Haruko because he had beaten some people in the camp, but he simply responded to their challenge. Hina wanted to fight with Inju, but Katajiri's younger sister held her back. Satomi thought it wasn't the time to argue, but they should think of ways to defeat the monsters. Haruko decided to closely observe your leadership abilities. He later met Shuma again and asked where his partner Midori was, and were taken to the infirmary. The girl had been injured while helping someone else. Her sensing ability had been taken away by the poison, and her rate of erosion would soon exceed the warning level. Haruko wanted he to end Midori's life yourself. He then visited Midori and listened to her talk about her life. The little girl also noticed that Kisara had a rather large destructive scent and could easily get lost in the darkness. But if Satomi became the leader, she believed Kisara would be fine. Midori then excused herself to go to the bathroom. Satomi couldn't follow her, and after a while, he went with everyone to search. But he only found Shuma standing in front of Midori, who had died. The little girl had chosen death to avoid being a burden to everyone. Shuma said he and Midori were very similar, and he hadn't actually left the dojo but was expelled. Because he had customized the strength of the martial art, it was now more suitable for civil security work than continuing at the dojo. Satomi wanted to apologize, but Shuma believed the fault lay with the monsters, so if he wanted to do something, he should destroy that monster king for him. Shuma had encouraged his spirit and wanted Satomi to succeed. The next morning, he put on the commander's uniform and went to meet the other civil security personnel. They didn't want him as commander and wanted to run away, so he stepped down and stabbed one to make a point. When they retaliated, Haruko blocked for him. He declared that if anyone intended to oppose or run away, he would skewer them all, because he wasn't as kind as Gadu. When Kisara questioned his actions, he argued that everyone was afraid of monsters, so he had to make them fear him more than they feared the monsters. Although he knew no one would like him, at this time he didn't need that. Kisara would stay by his side even if others opposed. Gadu's associate thought he was becoming a dictator, but he believed he couldn't be like Gadu because the 2 previous losses were due to him. When the little girl threatened to skewer him, Shuma stopped her. He wanted the girl to cooperate with him. She didn't serve 2 masters, but Shuma only needed her cooperation in the upcoming battle. Many helicopters then arrived, and their owner was Miori. She was called here by Satomi to be a strategist because now no one else was willing to help them except Miori's family. She knew that in half a day, the Monster King's horde would arrive, and she brought a bomb that could completely destroy that monster. But it was mandatory to make a hole in the monster's body and throw the bomb in, then wait for it to recover before detonating. And the only person who could penetrate that armor was Satomi. Miori proposed moving their camp elsewhere, and the place they moved to was the statue of the Origin Flame. When they arrived, everyone was prepared to welcome the monster. Satomi saw Inju standing alone over there, and the little girl was remembering when friends gathered here with Satomi. He had forgotten that bringing Inju here would make her remember the pain. He tried to encourage Inju that there would be a time when she would decide whether to save this world or not. But now they needed to keep it existing first. Satomi's team now officially had 10 people, and the monster was also ready to set out on its rampage. And do he remember the bodyguard Takudo who Satomi shot in the hand and drove away? He's now back for revenge. Satomi's army now had only 10 minutes left before the monster horde arrived. But they still couldn't see them from afar, and suddenly they appeared and approached like a storm. Either they would be destroyed, or the monsters would. Suddenly many lanterns were released over here. Satomi received a phone call from Tenshi and learned this was her doing. These lanterns contained the hope of the people, so she believed Satomi would have more motivation to fight. Satomi thought this must be the bright side of humanity. It was time to start the operation, so Satomi ordered all troops to open fire. The flying monsters in the sky were gradually pushed back by human gunfire. When they thinned out, Satomi moved to step 2, charging forward to attack. He was successively blocked by the big ones, but his friends were always there to handle them for him. From Kisara to the Katajiri brothers, Shuma, and finally Haruko. They successfully cleared the way for him to reach the boss monster. Both Satomi and Inju rushed up together. The monster also shot spines to defend, but Satomi pierced through them all. He punched a hole in its body, inserted the bomb, and ran away with Inju. But while he was counting down, Miori informed that the bomb had malfunctioned and needed an impact to detonate. He knew what he had to do, so he said goodbye to Inju and thanked her for the past year. The little girl refused, so she was knocked unconscious by a punch. He tried to approach the monster again, but was spat with acid, damaging his leg. He was helpless and could do nothing more, so Shuma came to help. He decided to take over Satomi's job, because his technique could affect the inside of the monster, and this was also heresy, so he had to bury it himself. Shuma then rushed in and threw a punch that reactivated the bomb and dragged the monster along with it. When Satomi regained consciousness, the only thing left was a bomb crater. Shuma had sacrificed himself to drag the monster away. The small monsters had also fled the city. Metal blocks have now been transported to rebuild, but Kisara and Satomi had returned to the dojo. Kisara called her brother, who was also the deputy minister of construction, generally related to the construction of the previous metal pillars. Kisara knew her brother had embezzled money and used low-quality materials to build the previous tower. That also meant he was responsible for this war. The two siblings decided to duel and put their lives on the line. She used a sword technique she had invented herself and launched an attack at extreme speed. Her brother hadn't even seen the move when one of his legs was gone. She wanted her brother to reveal the truth about their parents' death. Years ago, their father had planned to expose the dark side of the family, so he was eliminated by the family members and grandfather. The monsters roaming the city was not a coincidence. She angrily left and told Satomi to close the door. She informed him that her previous move had 2 strikes and wasn't aimed at just the leg. Her brother inside had been cut in half. Satomi heard a scream, went back to check, and witnessed the horrific scene. Kisara believed her sense of justice was now lost. She had come to a realization and decided to turn herself into a demon to confront the other demons in her family. This would be her revenge. Satomi told the 2 girls that he might have to consider Kisara an enemy in the future. A few days later, Tenchi held a press conference to tell the whole population that everything was now under control and enacted laws to protect children more securely. Satomi and Inju were invited to the award ceremony, but their train encountered a problem and stopped midway. Satomi recalled the previous losses and feared that he was becoming numb to those losses, so he asked Inju to stay by his side before he truly changed. Inju hugged him and promised to stay with Satomi forever. And with that, the film comes to an end.